அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி தானி பெரும் கருணை அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி 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 தானி பெரும் கருணை அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி 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 தானி பெரும் கருணை அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி.
Yes, good morning, vanakkam to everybody. Arupperunjodi, Arupperunjodi, Thanipperum Karunai, Arupperunjodi. This is the concluding part of the talk that I gave last time. You will recall was on Vallalar's vegetarianism, his argument, his case for vegetarianism. And then I said that the remaining part has to do with the vegetarian diet, and based again on some indications that we have, some of which could be traced back to Vallalar's own instructions. So this is that second part. Now I want to start with some preliminary remarks. First, that we are doing Satvicharam. And Satvicharam, as Vallalar has made it clear, has to do with the inquiry into truth. So it's not just exchange of opinions. You know, this is my opinion and that's your opinion and so on and so forth. Nor is it, and it's not just a debate for debate's sake, you know. You just play that game, you know, I say something, somebody can object and so on, some kind of a game. No, this has to do with the inquiry into Vallalar's teachings and the truths that those teachings point to. So it's a serious, matter. Second thing I want to say is, this is Suddha Sanmargam. And I have mentioned that it is one of the great, if not the greatest, teachings in the spiritual traditions of the world, given to us by one of the great, if not the greatest, spiritual teacher, Chidambaram Ramalingam, also known as Vallalar. And it's Suddha Sanmargam. Sanmargam, of course, is the path of wisdom. And Vallalar added Samarasa. Suddha means it's also the path of harmony, Samarasam, universal, common path. But he added Suddha means it's pure. So we should not allow contamination, pollution, impurity of false or distorted or even crazy claims. So we don't want to turn it into Asiddha Sanmargam or even Paitya Sanmargam. So, I think there's a real need for a purified Siddha Sanmargam edition of Vallalar's writings, because all sorts of second-hand and third-hand reports, sometimes maybe even copying Vallalar's signature or something like that may have circulated. That's my that's the impression that I increasingly have looking at some of the stuff that's attributed to Vallalar. So the correction is to study very carefully the important authentic writings of Vallalar. And certainly the Vinnapangal, the Jivagadniya Workam, and the Arupperunjodi Agaval, which is the last great work that Vallalar wrote, completed 1872. Jivagadniya Workam, of course, is 1867. And I think the Vinnapangal also belong more or less to 1872, 2 years before Vallalar's decision to depart from earthly life, this physical body. Now, so we have to study those writings. We also have to remember that, he's known as a great Tamil poet, but it's not so well known that he's also a great philosopher. And if you read the Manumurai Kandavasagam and the Jivagaranya Vorukam, you get examples and glimpses of Vallalar, the great philosopher, specifically ethical or moral philosopher. It is our lack of fortune or punyam that some of his planned philosophical works, he mentions a number of them in a letter. Sanmarga Vilakkam being one of them, Sadhana Vilakkam, Kalanta Vilakkam, Yoganta Vilakkam, Nadanta Vilakkam, Bodhanta Vilakkam, Vedanta Vilakkam, Siddhanta Vilakkam, Anda Vilakkam, Pinda Vilakkam, Prakriti Vilakkam, Tattva Vriddhi, all of these things, Ilakkana Vriddhi, Tarka Vriddhi, and so forth, Ulagiyal Vilakkam, Kalai Marabu, he mentions all of these projected works, which of course it's our lack of good fortune that he didn't get to complete them or even get started on some of them. But the point is that since he was also a great philosopher, we need to have some understanding of philosophy to understand his great teachings. It simply won't do to just, pick something here and there, and I'm also going to make another important point shortly, and imagine that that's Vallalar's teaching and so on and so forth. And that's why I think there is really urgent need for a purified Siddha Sanmargam edition of Vallalar's authentic writings and teachings. I've been doing some work in my blog. In fact, now on a daily basis, it's not a commentary, but it's just a English translation of selected verses from the Agaval on a daily basis. And then, I'll be continuing with my commentary on the Agaval. And I will also be posting a series on Vallalar's philosophical arguments related to my point that Vallalar is also a great moral philosopher. So we have to have some understanding of philosophy. We have to study his authentic writings. We've already mentioned them carefully and so on. Otherwise, we'll end up misrepresenting, all sorts of people saying all sorts of things. For instance, in the Upadesa Kuripugal, of which the Nitya Karma Vidhi and so forth, which give us some idea of the vegetarian diet, I'll be coming to that soon. The Upadesa Kuripugal, these were actually put together by Balakrishna Pillai, and it came out in his edition in 1932. But he points out that these are second-hand and third-hand accounts. And there is really no reference to the person who might have made a note or two. We don't have any information on who did these notes or specific note. And so we just cannot assume that, somebody sat next to Vallalar and wrote down his instructions faithfully, and that's what we have in Upadesa Kuripugal. We cannot make that assumption. Here is an example of some of the nonsense and absurdities that you find in the Upadesa Kuripugal. So, on page 78 of Nangam Puttagam, Upadesa Pagadi, குளிர்ந்த கொல்லி என்னும் பச்சிலையை கசக்கி குக்குதண்டத்தின் கீழும் மேலும் வைத்து மூடிய 2 நாழிகைக்குள் கருமுற்றி குஞ்சு பொரிக்கும். That's just absurd. தீப்பூடு பிடுங்கி நசுக்கி இறந்தவரைய வலது காதில் வைத்தால் பிழைப்பான். முத்துப்பூண்டு சாற்றை இறந்து போன பட்சி எது ஆனாலும் அதன் மேல் சிறுக 2 நாழிகை பிழிந்தால் பிழைக்கும். This is all just nonsense. Okay? And the author of Aruppuranjodi Agaval could not have possibly said these absurd things. And these are some of the things that you find in the Upadesa Kuripugal. And unfortunately, even some commentators on Vallalar, otherwise competent commentators, are using things from the Upadesa Kuripugal as though These were faithful transcriptions of Vallalar's instructions or teachings. I just read you some examples of nonsense that is in the Upadesa Kurupugal. Okay? And we go around saying that Vallalar said that if you muttu poondu saatrai, garlic juice, if you squeeze it on some bird, then irandra narige, one narige is 24 minutes, so in about an hour or so, it will come back to life. A dead bird will come back to life if you squeeze this muttu poondu saatrai or garlic juice or something like that. Okay, so that will make Vallalar look really crazy, and probably send people running away from this sort of stuff. So we don't want to go around doing that sort of thing. We always have to ask, what is the source? When somebody claims that Vallalar, this is Vallalar's teaching, or this is Sudasan Margam and so forth, we have to ask, what is the source? And if they are getting it from second-hand or third-hand source, we have to immediately, of course, use our common sense and critical thinking, but also check with the Jivagarniya work, the Vinnapangal and Aruppuranjodi Agaval, and if what is attributed, of course, common sense can tell us it's nonsense, like the ones that I just read to you, but otherwise, if it's inconsistent, if it does not agree with the Jivagarniya work, the Vinnapangal and the Agaval, can't possibly be Vallalar's teaching. Even Balakrishna Pillai, he points out, of course, that, there's no information on who compiled these notes and so forth. And he also says we have to finally check with the Jivagarniya Workam and the Agaval and the other writings, authentic writings. But he says that, for instance, he says in the introduction to this Upadesa Pagadi, the book of teachings, the notes which allegedly contain Vallalar's instructions, advice, or teachings, he says that practitioners of Sudasan Margam do not use nehi or ghee or clarified butter. But Vallalar's own, Vallalar has mentioned in some of his letters nehi, pasu nehi, and he has celebrated pasu nehi in the Agaval. And even, I believe, in the Nitya Karma Vidhi and so forth, there are some contradictions there which we will take a look at later. He does mention nehi. It does mention nehi. Now, I think some of these instructions Vallalar may have given to the Satya Jnana Savai, the Satya Dharmasalai cooks. In fact, Vallalar was staying in the Satya Dharmasalai for some time. And one of the main purposes or functions of Satya Dharmasala is to provide food for the hungry. But I'm pretty sure that it was also feeding members of the Sanmarga Sangam, including Vallalar. And Vallalar certainly would have applied some of his knowledge of, what sort of food is good for health and so forth. And advise the cooks in the Satya Dharmasala. So I suspect that that is probably the source of some of these instructions on food, vegetarian food, of course. But again, coming back to this Upadesa Kurupigal and all sorts of nonsense attributed to Vallalar, we have to remember that there were people that were hostile to Vallalar's work, including the Saiva establishment in Chidambaram. And so it's quite likely that they concocted things and added it on, just perhaps even to just make it all look very strange. It's one of the ways in which you can undermine someone's work is to attribute all kinds of nonsense. So we have to be very cautious when it comes to Upadesa Kurupigal or any kind of second-hand or third-hand notices, Vilambarangal, and so on and so forth. And our final court of appeal has to be really the Agaval, and then the Vinnapangal, and the Jivagarniya Urukam. And the poems that express more or less the same things as the Jivagarniya Urukam, the Vinnapangal, and the Agaval. Moving on to a couple of things from the last talk. I may have mentioned about gorillas and vegetarianism. I think I mentioned the example of the gorilla as an extremely strong animal, but lives mostly on vegetarian food, you know. I didn't mean to say that it was making a conscious choice of vegetarian food. No, but it's mostly vegetarian food. Some gorillas will eat insects and so forth. Most of the apes do that, including chimpanzees. But if you look at the elephant, that's also for the most part a vegetarian. And the rhinoceros, Ganda Mirugam, that's a better example of a really strong creature that is purely herbivore. It doesn't, it eats leaves and roots and so forth. It does not eat meat at all. So this is in relation to the point that, vegetarian food makes you weak and all that kind of stuff. Now, of course, if you're not careful about nutrition in your choice of vegetarian food, and if you're not careful about cooking and preparation, you can lose out on the vitamins and the minerals and be weak. But there's nothing in the vegetarian food, the concept of vegetarian food, and the kinds of vegetarian foods that are available, that is going to make anyone weak. You know, that's quite an unreasonable conclusion. And when we look at these very powerful animals, gorilla, elephant, and rhinoceros, that are all mostly herbivores, if not purely herbivores, eat leaves and roots and so forth, then the notion that vegetarian food somehow makes you weak begins to look absurd. What else from the last talk? I think that's probably it. Yeah, so one point on eggs. Traditional vegetarian diet, what's called Saiva Unavu, vegetarian food in Saivism and so forth, they have generally avoided eggs, but they may have a thought that the eggs contain developing life. That's a misconception. The eggs that you find in the stores don't contain life. There's no developing embryo. So you're not killing any development of life when you go into the store and buy those eggs and boil them or whatever. So consumption of eggs is not contrary to Jivagarniya Urukam. Remember Vallalar's argument against non-vegetarianism, which I went into in my last talk. Non-vegetarian food is not to be consumed because it is tamasic food. It is tamasic food because it creates suffering and death and results in the withdrawal of Anma Vilakam and Kadavul Vilakam from the body. So then there is Tamasiga Gunam that covers that body, permeates that body, and that's why the food that is based on it becomes Tamasiga Gunavu. Himsaya Agaram, therefore it is Tamasiga Agaram. Not only does it produce suffering and death, but as a consequence, it results in the withdrawal of Anma Vilakam, Jiva Vilakam, Anma Vilakam, and Kadavul Vilakam, which is there in the Jiva Vilakam. It's the Voli or light within the light of the Jivan, or the soul, which is being driven out of the body, which was driven out of the body, and the body is now dead, and people are cutting that up and eating. That's Tamasiga Unavu. Now, there's no such thing in the case of eggs. The eggs do not contain any developing living being. At least not the eggs that you find in the stores. Therefore, it's not contrary to Jivagamya Varukam to consume eggs. This should be very clear to everybody. And if somebody has the misconception that those eggs have some kind of little baby chicken developing, that's a completely mistaken conception. Is it asuttam? I think I said last time that there's a possibility of that argument that it's asuttam, but not really that different from milk, which is yielded by the cow, or honey that's yielded by the bees. So, you can allow for some taste and all that. Obviously, when it comes to food, taste does come into play, but it's not all completely a matter of taste, because there are ethical considerations, as Vallalar has explained in the Jivaganya Varukam. There is the impact on the environment, as we are increasingly seeing, and there is also the impact on one's own health and longevity. So it can't be just purely taste. I just like this food, so, leave me alone with it. You want something else, I'm going to leave you alone with that. In some cases, it's like that. You like coffee, I like tea. We don't want to have a debate about that. Maybe you like Muringakai and I like Muringakai or Moringa, which is mentioned actually in the Nitya Karma Vidhi. Probably Vallalar approved it. It's now a very fashionable health food, Moringaka, or they call it Moringa. Okay, you like Moringa, and then I like eggplant, Patrikai, which is also mentioned in the Sanmargam vegetarian food instructions. We don't want to have a big debate about that. There's really no question of any debate. It's a matter of taste. So certainly on some matters, it's going to be taste. And then health considerations come into play. Somebody might be intolerant of milk, physically intolerant, lactose intolerant, and there's no point of such a person considering milk. But as Vallalar has made it clear repeatedly in his letters and other writings, pasumpal, cow's milk, well-boiled cow's milk is very high in nutrition, and in most cases it's not contrary to Jivagarnya Varukam. If you see that there's some himsai that's being done to the calf or the cow, then you'll have to change, or you'll have to put an end to that practice. That's all that it takes, and there are farms that don't engage in these kinds of practices. This was an issue also that came up. But consumption of milk is not in itself contrary to Jivagarnya Varukam. That's why Vallalar strongly recommends it and celebrates it. And so, on these matters, the first question we have to ask is it contrary to Jivagarnya Varukam? Then we have to ask, is it imsai agaram, and therefore tamasiga agaram? Imsai agaram means it's producing suffering and death, killing. If it doesn't do that, then it's not imsai agaram, and then therefore it's not tamasiga agaram. When you pluck fruits and vegetables, you're not killing the plants. You're not causing any suffering because the plant doesn't have a nervous system. It doesn't have a brain. It cannot experience pain. Therefore, there is no imsai in taking fruits and vegetables. Now, in harvesting fruits and vegetables in these farms and so forth, they're using pesticides. They're using insect killers. Now, I personally prefer, and I would make a case for organic insect repellents. So if you're growing your own fruits or vegetables in your backyard or something like that, use organic insect repellents. There are combinations of oils and so forth, including peppermint, that can repel insects. They won't come anywhere near you or anywhere near the plant if you spray the plant with these kinds of organic oils and so forth, or combinations of such oils. But unfortunately, they're using much stronger chemicals that kill insects. So, we can't say, insects are being killed when we harvest fruits and vegetables, therefore we have to abandon fruits and vegetables. Now, then we have to just simply sit still without eating anything. Okay? So that's the extremism that you find in, the Jains, for instance. They always walk around with a mask covering around their mouths because they don't want any insects to go inside their mouths. But when they are walking around, obviously they're going to be killing some insects, sometime or the other. Destruction is part of existence. So, what we have to do is to be more cautious, more careful, and where we can avoid killing life and where we can help life, we should do so. But we can't turn this into some kind of extremist, ahimsa, you can't exist. Because when you walk outside or when you're driving, who knows, your car may be crushing some insects. You're not aware of it. But it can be taken for granted that that's going to happen sometime or the other. If you go for a walk, well, what we have to do is be more careful. And if you notice some insects in front of you, try to avoid them rather than walk on them and crush them. So the Jivakaranya Workam requires us to slowly develop our awareness and concern for living beings. But it's not going to be realistic or feasible to turn it into some kind of extremist ahimsa doctrine, So, some harm or the other is going to be caused, and if we become aware of that, we try to do something about it. But it won't do to say, some harm is happening, so therefore I have to avoid it. In that case, then we can't consume fruits and vegetables because insects are probably being killed in these farms with pesticides. What we can do is maybe, we can influence the farm from which we are purchasing. We can tell them, use organic and so forth. Or again, the best thing would be to grow your own vegetables and fruits. And if you can do that, then use organic insect repellents and so forth. And minimize the possibility of, minimize the destruction of life. So we have to keep those things in mind. The area of food, dietary matters, there's all kinds of crazy ideas, and it's largely because of habit or some taste or something like that. They have a role to play, but it can't just simply be taste, nor can it all just be simply based on some harm or the other is happening. Then we can't consume anything at all. So we have to use common sense, and of course we have to use the principles of Jivakaranyam and try to come up with the best diet we can, which agrees with Jivakaranya Workam and the other principle that Vallalar says is the main purpose of food, which is to make the body healthy and strong. And why are we going to make the body healthy and strong? Not to appear on the cover of Time or Vogue or Cosmopolitan magazine. We want to make the body healthy and strong in order to practice Suddha Sanmargam and achieve its goals. That's why we're, again, Vallalar is a remarkable teacher in that respect. Among the world's teachers, religious teachers and so forth, he is quite unique in his emphasis on health and longevity. And of course, he has identified the factors that undermine health and longevity and has left behind some instructions and indications as to how we can make sure that these factors of health and longevity, agaram, nittirai, bayam, and maidanam, which is basically food, sleep, I would add also work, and then stress, and then conservation of energy, physical energy and so forth. In this context, I also want to mention that vegetarian food, is one aspect of Suddha Sanmargam lifestyle. What we are really talking about here, and what Vallalar has addressed in some instructions that have come to us in some form or the other, in parts, is Suddha Sanmargam lifestyle. What is the lifestyle of a practitioner of Suddha Sanmargam? What should be the general elements of the daily routine? That in that context, we have to consider food, because food is an essential part of daily life. But it's not the only thing. And we always say, I think I pointed that out in the last talk. It's not as though you can just follow vegetarian diet and imagine that that's going to solve all the problems. No, you have to pay attention to other factors, and even within vegetarian diet, there are certain factors, like the mode of preparation. If you fry it to death, as Indian cooking normally does, they fry things to death, and they throw in all kinds of, spices. Now, Vallalar does mention a couple of spices, which we'll talk about, but, they put chili powder, too much of chili powder, salt, this, that, and the other. It's all titillating the tongue, but it's extremely harmful. The amount of salt that's used raises blood pressure. Chili and so forth produce other issues. So those things also have to be considered, and it's not just a matter of, I'm having a vegetarian diet, so I should live a long life. Well, it depends on the kind of vegetarian diet you're following, and I'll go into that shortly. Now, there are some indications that we can formulate, based on some hints, probably coming from Vallalar's instructions to the people managing the Satya Dharmasala kitchen. So, in any case, let's bear in mind that vegetarian food is one aspect of Suddha Sanmargam lifestyle, and the other aspects also have to be addressed, and the main goal here is to preserve the health and longevity, extend the lifespan of the degam or body. And why are we doing that? In order to practice Suddha Sanmargam and achieve its benefits or goals. Siddhi Mukti Inbam. Now, some think that, I think I noticed a Facebook post saying that, these kinds of things that are recommended as food will help us to conquer death. That's really a serious misconception. That's an exaggeration. By taking well-boiled milk, honey, and so on and so forth, you're not going to conquer death. If you're also taking care of the other aspects of Suddha Sanmargam lifestyle, then you'll certainly maintain health and, extend your longevity, maybe even slow the aging process, and maintain a reasonable store of energy for your activities. That's the best you can say. But, some people go around making all these tall claims that these foods are somehow going to make you immortal. And that's just simply crazy. There's really no basis for thinking that. Vallalar's concept of immortality is, of course, a unique one, a great one, but it does not say that if you eat vegetarian food, you'll become immortal. Let's now get to some general principles before we look at some specific things. And again, these are just indications. I'll probably make a couple of posts in my blog developing some of these things. One important principle is moderation. So, neither excess nor deficiency. The food that we consume should be in moderate amounts. Whether it's milk or honey or whatever it is, egg or whatever, it's all in moderate amounts. That's the first main principle. Second is that we have to have a reasonable interval of time between one instance of consumption of food and the other. And it looks like Vallalar, it looks like 6 hours is being recommended. Of course, it all depends on what type of food you ate and whether you're feeling hungry and so forth. One of the main principles is you should eat when you're hungry. Vallalar has already talked about the harmful effects of hunger, of leaving your body in a state of hunger. That's not a good thing for health. So when you're hungry, you must eat food. But you have to eat it in a moderate amount, and you shouldn't overfill yourself. There are some hints saying that you should maybe it's 75, 80, 85%, so that you still feel that you could eat a little bit more, but you stop there. These things all have a scientific basis. It all has to do with the amount of work your stomach and other related systems have to do to digest your food. The quality of food, of course, it's vegetarian food, but vegetarian food is a whole variety, and some of it might not be really good for health, even though it's vegetarian. So we have to again get into nutrition. We have to look at the science of nutrition and so forth. We can't simply take something that's attributed in the basic Kurupigal, the Nitya Karma Vidhi and so on, and then imagine that it's some kind of gospel truth that came from Vallalar's lips. May have, but we always have to confirm it with the science of nutrition and see what the latest information tells us. Another principle is the pace or speed of eating. We have to chew carefully, but we shouldn't be too slow nor in eating, nor too fast in eating. Okay? So the moderation, the reasonable intervals, moderation in quantity, reasonable intervals, and also the time of the day. There are indications to the effect that your night food has to be less in quantity than your day food. Okay? These are all very useful hints. In fact, we all should probably draw up a dietary plan based on these indications. And of course, personal preferences are going to come into play to some extent, and that's fine, but we should probably draw up a dietary plan and stick to it on a daily basis. If we're serious about maintaining the health of the body and its strength and extending the lifespan. Subject, of course, remember, you have to pay attention to the other factors too. If you're taking vegetarian food according to all these principles, but then you're stressed out on a daily basis by them, anxiety, worry, fear, frustration, and so forth, that's going to undermine the benefits. And if you don't get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, you're sleep deprived. The ill health effects of sleep deprivation are all well documented. Mentally and physically, sleep deprivation is going to have harmful effects. And then you're taking vegetarian food, but then you're sleep deprived, and that's not going to help your health. So that's why I'm saying vegetarian food is part of the Suddha Sanmargam lifestyle. And of course, those other aspects all need to be developed so that we have a well-rounded conception and plan of the Suddha Sanmargam lifestyle, living daily life plan and so forth. All these have to be formulated. Each person has to do that, taking into account their situation, special health needs, dietary needs, and so forth. But this is, again, an extraordinary emphasis in Vallalar's teachings that you're not going to find in other, teachers and so on and so forth. Even, a lot of this Hindu stuff, there's a lot of, either it's fasting and torturing yourself, or you don't really pay much attention to the needs of the body. Okay, so there's something very progressive, very advanced, and very valuable in Vallalar's focus on diet and, of course, other aspects that I've already mentioned. So moving on now to some specifics of vegetarian diet. I'm going to start with some verses in the Agaval. And then I'll look at some indications or hints in the Nitya Karma Vidhi, Paduvidhi, Sarapavidhi, and so forth. There are contradictions that I'll point out, but there are also some valuable things that we can take from those indications. Remember, Vallalar didn't write any of that. It's either second-hand or third-hand notes, but some of it probably came from Vallalar's instructions to the cooks and other people in charge of preparation of food in the Satya Dharmasala. So the verses in the Agaval I want to start with here, noting that vegetarian food is not just vegetables, it's also fruits and a couple of other things that we'll be looking at, categories. There is couplet, before I go into that, of course, the case of diabetes is going to be an exceptional one. Fruits contain sugar, and if you have diabetes, and if you're taking medication to control your sugar, then you have to reduce the juice and the sugar in the fruits that Vallalar celebrates. So you can still have them, but then you have to, as I said, reduce the juice content, squeeze out the sugar, as it were, and take it in small quantities. So the first couplet is 628. Karumburu sarum kaninda mukkaniyan virumburum iradamum mikkattimbalum. So, of course, it's referring to sugarcane juice, which has a lot of nutrition, sugarcane juice, and mukkani. Mukkani is plantain, which is a kind of banana. The banana that we pick up from the store is not exactly plantain. Plantain is bigger, and its skin is thicker, and apparently it contains more nutrients than the banana, although, the banana also is pretty good. So plantain, mambaram, mukkani, one of the mukkani is mambaram, that is mango, and pala, or jackfruit. So, sugarcane juice, plantain, ripe plantain, mango and jackfruit, and mikkattimbalum, that is well-boiled cow's milk. Okay? Vallalar always mentions cow's milk, pasumpa. And it's, you can look up all the studies. It's really rich in nutrients essential for not only the development of the body, but also, generally body, but also brain. And milk deficiency, unless you're compensating by drinking almond milk or some other thing, milk deficiency can produce serious deficiency of not only calcium, but also vitamin D. And there are studies showing that vegans and vegetarians who have neglected milk suffer from bone problems as they get older, serious bone issues. Okay, and our goal in Suddha Sanmargam is to keep the body strong, not to appear on the cover of Time or Cosmopolitan like Arnold Schwarzenegger flexing his muscles, but in order to practice Suddha Sanmargam, which is challenging enough, in addition to, the other things that we face. So, if that's the goal, then we have to pay careful attention to nutrition. But this verse, Karumburu Saram, Karinda Mukkani, and Virumburam Iradamum Mikkattimbalum, gives us a kind of concoction, fruit salad, basically. If you can take it with some sugarcane juice, again, if you're diabetic, you have to moderate the quantity and all that. That all goes without saying. But if you don't have those sugar issues, then sugarcane juice, of course, you're not going to keep drinking, glass after glass after glass. It's all moderate quantity. And fruit salad made of ripe plantain, mango, and jackfruit, and you add some well-boiled cow's milk to it. might be a very good start as a breakfast, And even I think there's an indication or two from Vallalar in one of his letters. He's saying you might want to take that in the morning, especially plantain, ripe plantain. Then he goes on to say, this is couplet 629, Gurangol kol thenum putti ondraki manangolla padanchai vagayura ietriya. So the reference here is to high quality honey, honeycomb, aged honeycomb, and so forth. Now again, when we take vegetables and fruits, some insects are probably being killed. Yeah, I can't just immediately stop eating vegetables and fruits. So honey, there are ways of getting honey which don't destroy the bees, although the bees are now also threatened by climate change. So we have to take the existence of bees very seriously. And we certainly have to investigate, to do some vicharam, satvicharam, into the circumstances of manufacturing of honey, if you're getting honey from a company, a particular brand, and so forth. But generally speaking, they want to keep in business, so it's not in their interest to kill the bees, right? Just as it's not going to be in the interest of someone to starve out the calves because they want the calf to grow into an adult cow and give milk and so forth. But if there are certain practices that are harmful to the bees, and if we discover that, then we have to act accordingly. And again, we're not talking about drinking half a glass of honey every 3 hours or anything like that. Talking about moderate quantity in any case. But honey, again, nutritional effects are well known. It is actually the most potent medicine against bacteria, especially certain types of mountain honey, kill bacteria very, very effectively. And it's a natural way of killing bacteria instead of using these powerful antibiotics, to which the bacteria may develop resistance. But honey, it's been well documented, is bacteria's worst enemy, So if you have if you want to deal with bacterial infection, use honey, and see what it does. Eventually, you may have to take antibiotics if you have a bacterial infection, but if you take honey on a regular basis, moderate amount, it will certainly contribute to keeping your body free of bacterial infections. Unavena palgal ureikanam negara vanamurum inbamayame aduvai, and so forth. He is celebrating, of course, the aspects of Arupar and Jodi, but why does he mention these things? Why does he mention sugarcane juice? Why does he mention mukhani? Why does he mention Paul? Why does he mention Thain? My interpretation is he's recommending these things. That's why he has selected these things when he's tracing Arupar and Jodi's manifestations or aspects in nature. So let's move on then to a few more couplets, and let me just play Malayu Sadasivam, a few couplets again, which in my approach give us an indication as to some of the things we can use in vegetarian diet, and the emphasis mostly on fruits, but also other things. Let me see where I can find this clip here. Okay, so this is Malayu Sadasivam singing some of these verses that I'll be examining shortly.
களைப்பெற கிடைத்த கருணை நன்னீரே இளைப்பெற வாய்த்த இன்சுவை உணவு தென்னை வாய் கிடைத்த செவ்விழநீரே தென்னை வான்மலத்தில் திருகு திம்பாலே நீர்மிதை தவிக்கும் நெல்லியம் கனியே வேர்விளை பலனில் பின் சுவை துளையே கட்டுமாம் பழமே கதலிவான் பழமே இத்தன சுவைத்தை இளந்தயன் கனியே புனிதவான் தருவில் புதுமையாம் பலமே கனியலாம் கூட்டி கலந்ததின் சுவைகள் இதந்தரு கரும்பில் எடுத்ததீங்காரே மதந்தரு வெல்ல பாகினின் சுவையே காலவே இனிக்கும் சர்க்கரை திரளே ஏனவே நாவுக்கு இனிய கற்கண்டை புறப்புறாதினிக்கும் உயர்மலை தேனே கலப்புறா மதுரம் கனிதவோ தேனே சமையிலாதனக்கு அந்நிய நடவே சுவையலாம் திரட்டிய தூய இம்பதமே பதம் பெற காட்டிய பசுமரும் பாலே இடம்பெற உருக்கிய கிளப்பதுனையே உணர்கிறாரென்றும் ஒருபடி தாயி மலர்ந்து நல் வண்ணம் வழங்கிய மலரே.
Yeah, the last couplet dealt with flowers, but let's start with the first couplet. So, கரும்புரு சாரும் கனிந்த முக்கணியன் விரும்புரும் இரதமும் மிக்கத்தீம் பாலும். Oh, I already read those. Okay, the ones that he started with. கலைப்பற கிடைத்த கருணை நன்னீரே இலைப்பற வாய்த்த இன்சுவை உணவே. So, karunai nannire, there are some things in the Upadesa Kuripigal. Again, I'm not saying all of it is nonsense, but there's a lot of nonsense there. I already gave you some examples. But I found that there was a point that was made that was very interesting, where it said water that's found in nature, in spring on the leaves and so forth. That's Pura Amudu. That's there, out there. It's a source of nourishment. Okay, like amudu is also a source of nourishment, amudu or nectar. And so, kalaipara kadaitha karunai nannire, nanneer, pure water, spring water, and so forth. And it's important to nourish the body with that pure water. But of course, Vallalar points out that it has to be boiled. So, if you can get pure water, spring water, and boil it, then that would be your nanneer. And it's going to remove exhaustion. Kalai para kadaitha karunai nannire. The pure water that's boiled, veneer, will remove your exhaustion. Will energize the body. Ilaipara vaitha insuvai unave. Again, unavu, when he mentions insuvai unavu, again, it's also ilaipara vaitha insuvai unave means pleasant tasting food, sweet food that is delicious food that also removes the body's exhaustion or weakness. It's interesting to see that he says insuvai unave. That means our vegetarian food does not have to be bland. Okay? It can be made tasty, but then when we try to make it tasty, we have to make sure that we don't fry it to death and, boil it so that all the vitamins and minerals are gone. We have to cook it in the proper way, but it's fine to have the food tasting good. There is no condemnation of insuvai. That's why he praises a manifestation. Insuvai unavu is also a manifestation of Aruparanjodi. So the emphasis on water, pure water, which of course in Siddhasan Margam we boil and take it, veneer, and insuvai unavu. Food that tastes good, something to keep in mind. Vegetarian food, of course. Tennai vai kidaitha sevvila neere, tennai van palathil thiruguthim pale. So this is the coconut palm tree, and he's referring both to coconut water, ilanir, and to coconut milk that you get by crushing or squeezing or crushing the coconut pulp. Both are recommended here as forms of, energizing of the body or forms of nutrition. So this would also be part of our vegetarian diet in Sudarshan Margam. coconut water, and coconut milk. Coconut water already, there's a lot of potassium and so on and so forth, other nutrients in coconut water. நீர் நசை தவிர்க்கும் நெல்லியங்கனியே வேர்விலை பலவின் மென் சுவை சுவையே. Nelli is the emblic myrobalan. In Sanskrit or Hindi, it's Amla, Amalaki, also known as Indian gooseberry. And it has medicinal uses as antioxidant, as an immune booster. It can also relieve pain. It can also work to reduce inflammation. It's apparently also useful to counteract ulcers and protect digestion and so forth, digestive processes and so on. So that's Nelliyankani, which we can certainly, we can use in Sudasanmargam vegetarian diet. Where will I palavin mensuvai sulaye refers to, according to many commentators, pala or jackfruit, the fruit of the jack tree. The pulp of this jackfruit has 74% water, 23% carbohydrates, 2% protein. And the carbohydrate component is basically in the sugars. And it's also a source of dietary fiber. So it also has vitamin B6, and it contains moderate levels of vitamin C and potassium. So it is a very nutritious fruit, falafel. And again, we can do a kind of a salad, or we can take it as a dish in the afternoons and so forth. But anyway, part of the Sudasanma vegetarian diet of Vallalar, based on his own celebration of these things in the Agalo, would be the Nelli or Indian gooseberry, also known as Amla, and the jackfruit, falafel. Moving on to the next couplet, 703, Kattumam Parame Kadalivan Parame, Ittu nar suvai sei ilendai yanganiye. So, we're talking about mambaram, mango, rich in vitamin A and so forth. And Kadalivan Param is plantain, which again, ripe plantain is a kind of banana, but it's not really identical to the common banana. It's bigger and has a thicker skin, and so forth. Both the wari plantain and the banana contain high levels of potassium. Most people don't get enough of that. And if we get adequate potassium, it may help to lower blood pressure and reduce heart disease risk. And, well, although he mentions wari param, plantain, you can also include bananas. If you can get for plantain, that's fine. They are the same family, but they are not many know that they are distinct. Okay, but they're the same banana family, if you want to call it, two different types of bananas, and they are included in the vegetarian diet of Vallalar, or based on Vallalar's indications. Kattumam Param is actually mango fruit dipped in a small pot or jar of honey and kept, then they eat it later on. Maybe a few months pass, and then they eat it. Something to try out. I never thought of that, but there's mango season. I intend doing that. Cut a few pieces of ripe mango, put it in a small pot of jar or honey, and then maybe take it after a week or two and see how it tastes. I'm sure it'll be delicious, but it also has the combination of mango fruit and some honey. Obviously going to be very nutritious. Fruits generally are very good sources of energy. Ilandayankaniye, So Ilandai is jujube, which must not be confused with jojoba. It's jujube, also known as red date, Chinese date. It turns red when it is dried. Apparently the fruit and the seeds are used in Chinese and Korean traditional medicine, and they're used to counteract stress, antibacterial, and they have anti-ulcer, anti-inflammatory action, again, boosting the immune system, antioxidant, healing of wounds, and so forth. It is used in Chinese medicine. It's combined with other herbs. This ilandai is used with other herbs to treat colds and the flu and so on. And the ilandai is supposed to have vitamins and amino acids. And in Chinese medicine, again, apparently it's used to treat spleen diseases. Moving on to the next couplet, Puridavan Daruvil Pudumayam Palame, Kaniyalam Kuti Kalandatin Suwe. So, this is Mukkani again. We have the three kinds of fruits, Wari, Mambaram, and Pala. Plantain fruit, mango fruit, and jackfruit. And as I said earlier, to make a salad, if you can make a salad, throw in some well-boiled milk and some honey, that should be a really good energy booster. Okay? And the fruits, let's not forget, also have enzymes, which are important for digestion. Now, in the Indian cooking, generally, people throw all kinds of things into their stomachs. And even Vallalar has some sarcastic comments on this in a couple of his poems, where he talks about people mixing, salt and all kinds of spices and kurambug and kuttu and then eating it indiscriminately. What goes into the stomach not only affects your digestion and in the long run your health, but also your mood or mental state. Now, in the yoga system in India, they have made correlations between the type of food and the mental state. So they say, Rajasic food will produce Rajasic feelings, desire, aggression, and so on. Tamasic food will make you lazy and sluggish, and sattvic food will generally keep you in a state of balance or harmony. So they did already recognize the effect of food on mental states. And the latest discoveries push that even farther. The stomach actually is the place of the second most complex nervous system in your body. It's they call enteric nervous system. It has so many complex and interrelated nerves, and they're all connected to the brain, that if they are affected adversely because of the kind of food that you're taking, it will affect your mood and your mental state, and I suppose that's going to have some influence on the type of person you are. I mean, if you take foods that might produce ulcer and, like this Andhra food, very spicy, oily, and so forth, you're putting your stomach on fire on a day-to-day basis, and you can imagine what kind of effects that's going to have, in terms of that person's personality or mood. So the stomach is not anything to be underestimated when you consider physical and mental health, when you consider not just the state of the body, but also your mood. There is a connection between food and mood. And so, this great couplet where he's recommending a fruit salad of plantain fruit or varaparam, mango, mambaram, and pala or jackfruit. And then Vallalar usually mentions, of course, milk and honey. We can imagine that it's going to have a very beneficial effect on the stomach, because as I said, the fruits have enzymes, and all these things combined are going to be very nutritious. They also provide the kind of sugar that the brain needs. The brain needs sugar. Some problems are created in the case of the diabetics, but again, they can moderate it, moderate quantity, and take out some of the juice and the sugar and so forth, but they can still take it and benefit from the enzymes. So that's a very helpful couplet. Moving on to the next one, 705. Idandaru karumbil edutha teenjare padandaru vella paginen suvaye. So this is again a reference to sugarcane juice, and talking about it has now produced a craving in me for sugarcane juice. Remember my trips to India, I used to love sugarcane juice, especially when they put some lemon juice in it. But maybe I'll have to look around to see if I can get sugarcane juice here in America. Sugarcane juice, and then padandaru vella paginen suvaye, boiled jaggery, molasses, and there is an emphasis here on sweet things. And again, there is a scientific basis for that, as long as it's done in moderation, of course, which is that the brain needs a constant supply of glucose. And the things that Vallalar is emphasizing here meet that demand of the brain. It's a high demand of the brain. Otherwise, you're going to feel tired. You're going to have difficulty focusing, concentrating. Going to be irritable, and so on and so forth. And we can see some correlations between the typical Indian food and these kinds of characteristics. Okay, moving on to couplet 706. Salave inikkum sakkare tirale yalave navukke iniya kattande. We're back again to the emphasis on sweet things. And again, I have to say, if you're diabetic, then there are some special qualifications that come into play, and you have to reduce the quantity and make sure that your sugar levels don't shoot up and so on. But even diabetics have to find a way to provide the brain with the glucose it needs. So there may be some ways in which these things can be incorporated, very small quantities or something like that. But he's again recommending sakkare tirale, kind of a mass of sugar, and kattande, which is rock candy, which is crystal sugar. And apparently, kattande is a healthy substitute for refined sugar, the kind of sugar that we pick up from the grocery stores. I don't do that. I use honey, but sugar. If people are using sugar, maybe you can think of switching to kattande. Next couplet is Ulapura dinikkum uyarmalai thene kalapura maduram kaninda kotrene. So this is the never decaying high mountain honey, aged honeycomb. This is the Ulapura dinikkum uyarmalai thene. So there is honey that's obtained from honeycombs in the mountains. There's mountain honey that you can find. Well, there are all kinds of honey, and I suppose many of them are good. But he is, of course, praising uyarmalai thene, mountain honey. And kalapura maduram kaninda kotrene, that's honeycomb, aged honeycomb. Go back again to the medicinal and nutritional properties of honey. And it's an essential part of the Sudasanmargam vegetarian diet, Vallalar's vegetarian diet. Next couplet, Davayilla denakku nanniya narave suvayillam thirattiya tuyatim padame. Back again to honey, and we're talking about also food Padame, Suvayalan Thirati Tuya Team Padame, is well cooked and tasty food, probably involving boiled rice. That's what it means. Moving on to the next couplet. Padambara Kaichya Pasunarum Pave, Idampara Urukiya Ilam Pasunaye. So, we're back again to milk. Padambara Kaichya Pasunarum Pave, cow's milk, well-boiled cow's milk. And we are also looking at ghee. Idam para urukkiya ilam pasunaye. Well clarified, well heated butter, that's what is ghee, So, both are recommended here, of course in moderate quantities. Okay. Before we look at some indications in the Nitya Karma Vidhi, Sadhana Vidhi, Paduvidhi, and Sirapa Vidhi, again, these are all notes. They're not writings from Vallalar. But some of them, I have selected some of them because they make sense and they are supported by the available information on nutrition and so forth. But before we look at that, there is a passage here that is also there in the Nitya Karma Vidhi sections that's worth taking into consideration. Eppadipatta bojanamayinam siridhu kurayave pusittal vendum, which means don't fill your stomach, leave some room, which means you always have to stop at the point where you feel you could eat more, but you've eaten sufficient amount, and you feel there's still room for more. That may be but you are, of course, you have reduced your appetite, you have satisfied your hunger, then that's the time to stop. And these are all really useful indications, because when you live, the present time, maybe it's also happening in India, elsewhere here, it's all about taste. And people here, especially in the United States, just simply eat indiscriminately, They might have just had a lunch and then they go and take a pizza and then on top of it beer, this, that, and the other. And they are taxing the digestive system. That's why you have so many cases of obesity, overweight issues, and so on, and all the health complications that come from them. And this advice to keep your stomach at least 15 to 20% empty when you eat, that's very good advice. And then it says, Enda kalathilum pasittal alladhu enda vagayilum bodhanam seyyapadadu, which is basically saying, again, we're tempted to eat snacks and so forth, but we have to become more mindful of that and eat only when we are hungry. And then the third point here is, Vada pitta sletumangal adhigarikattaka bhojanangalai arindu vidal vendam. This is the Ayurvedic notion that there's vada or wind, pittam or bile, and sletumum phlegm, and there are certain fruits that increase the gaseous element, or increase the bile element, or increase the phlegm element, and we have to pay attention to these kinds of effects of foods and reduce them. If you know that something is going to increase phlegm, some kind of cold fruit or something, some kinds of fruits maybe could increase the phlegm, then you reduce the quantity, certain kinds of potatoes and so on, again, if you take it in reduced quantity, you may not have an issue, but sometimes they increase the wind or the gaseous element, and it's something to, I think, keep in mind. when we're talking about the vegetarian food in Sudarshan Marga. What kind of effect does the food have on what are called the three humors, Vada, Pitta, Slethamu, wind, bile, and phlegm? Something to keep in mind. Moving on to, and again, the emphasis is to assuage your hunger, to eat food when you are hungry. Pasi kandawudan tadai seyyamal agaram koduttal vendum. This is very important advice. A lot of us, breakfast and all that, we're putting, running, working like slaves. For what purpose is a good question to ask. But we neglect our health. And people rush around. This is the pace of modern life. Rush around, they grab something from a fast food place, and they don't even have time to chew it and chew it properly and even maybe enjoy the food. What's the point of living like that? Something to ask oneself. Can't even have your breakfast in a normal way, and you're rushing around. Doesn't make any sense to live like that. Then agaram kodukkabodu migunda alasyamum agadu migunda thivramum agadu. I think I've already addressed that point. Eat at a moderate pace, not too slow or not too hasty. And with those kinds of remarks in the Nitya Karma Vidhi section, we can certainly agree, There's nothing to disagree with. It's saying well-cooked rice and so forth. The rice should be well-cooked. We know from Thuluvul Velayudu Mudaliya's reminiscence that Vallalar did take a bowl of rice. Now, I don't know which period in Vallalar's life that he was talking about. Maybe if it was the late phase where he was saying in the Siddhivalagam, maybe he reduced his food consumption quite drastically. But at other times, I'm sure he would have followed his own advice to other people and made sure that he had nutritious food in moderate amounts. So, well-cooked rice, that's one of the things. I've already mentioned hot water. It says that karune kurangu. So now we're going to talk about some vegetables, greens, lentils, and so forth. That would be part of the Sudarshan Margam vegetarian diet. So one of the things that is recommended here in the Nitya Karma Vidhi, again based on notes, and they are second-hand or third-hand, but some of them may have come from Vallalar's instructions to the cooks in the Satya Dharmasala. How can we be sure? Well, just look up the nutritional information on it. If there's something good about it, then yes, probably it was recommended and was used. Now, Balakrishna Pillai, some of you may know this, but he was a philosophy instructor, later became a lawyer, and I think perhaps maybe he even became a judge. But his early education was in philosophy. And I think he may have added some of his own commentaries on Vallalar's teachings in the Upadesa Kurupagal. We can't rule that out. And he does mention that he did compile some instructions on health and so forth based on some Tamil texts on health. In any case, our main concern is whether what is said, the instruction, the suggestion is supported by the current information on nutrition and so forth, medicinal use, beneficial medicinal use and so forth. And if that's the case, then we can accept it. So, Karune Kurangu, elephant foot yam, it's also called Sene Kurangu, is mentioned as one of the Kurangu Vagaigal that we can take. And it's usually used with a rice dish in Tamil cooking or in Tamil Nadu, southern India, Tamil Nadu state, Apparently, it has served as a main source of carbohydrates during the famine-stricken days. It's also used in Indian medicine, and all the three Indian medicinal systems, Ayurveda, the Tamil Siddha system, and what's called Unani, it is recommended. This elephant foot yam or Karnik Kuranga. Apparently one of the uses is it has a beneficial effect on hemorrhoids, but that's just one of its, beneficial effects. So Karnik Kuranga is certainly something to use as part of Siddha Sanmargam vegetarian diet. Here's an example of a contradiction, which I pointed out. That's why we have to use common sense, critical thinking, and comparison with the Agaval and so forth. Here it says, Paravagaigal unnaduruttal vendum. Then immediately after that it says, Avattal payan variparam, rastali variparam, ivai nerdal sirudu kolludal kura. Well, they are param. So, on the one hand, it's saying Paravagaigal unnaduruttal vendum, and then contradicts it by saying, you can take some amounts of variparam, rastali variparam, and so forth. And we know, of course, that the Agaval has placed mukhani, mambaram, plant and fruit, and jackfruit. So this statement, Paravaigal Unnadurthal Venda, we just have to throw it out because it's undermined by the next claim which recommends variparam. So these are the kinds of things you have to pay attention to when you're reading the Upadesa Kuripugal, which again are some valuable things, but you have to really put it under a microscope. You have to be very careful with the Upadesa Kuripugal because there's a lot of nonsense, and as I said, it's all second-hand, third-hand, and Balakrishna Pillai has pointed out that there's no indication as to who composed these notes. There's no name or anything like that. Okay? So that's another example of a contradiction in these Upadesa Kuripugal. Coming to spices, Siragam and Milagu, you can see they are emphasized. That means more than one place there's a reference to Milagu and Siragam. So Milagu is black pepper and Siragam is cumin, and their beneficial effects on the digestive system, and black pepper is an expectorant. It clears out the phlegm, and Siragam has a very beneficial effect on digestion. So that's something to include. And speaking of Siragam, on YouTube you'll find a doctor, I don't remember his name now. He is a qualified doctor, and he's talking about black cumin, Karuppu Siragam, also known as Nigella sativa, and he's saying that if you take the black cumin seeds with honey, there are some studies showing that it can have a counteracting effect on the coronavirus. And he makes this claim with an analysis of the chemical components of black cumin taken together with honey. That's something, if you're interested, you can type in on YouTube black cumin and COVID-19. You'll find some information. So Siragam, interesting, was emphasized and seems to be also relevant in the context of the coronavirus. So Milagu, black pepper, I've mentioned last talk that I've added it. Now I'm actually adding Siragam also, including specifically black cumin, to boiled milk, and I add some honey, and I find that it gives you energy and it also increases your appetite. So it's definitely has a positive effect on your digestive system. Next passage here says, Uppu kuraivaga சேர்த்து கொள்ளல் வேண்டும். எந்த வகையிலும் உப்பு மிகுதியாக கொள்ளாமல் உபாயமாக கொள்ளுவது தேகம் நீடிப்பதற்கு ஏதுவாம். So vegetarian food, again, we have to also use spices, and then we have to be careful about what we're doing. Now, salt, it's well supported by the science of nutrition that salt creates various kinds of health complications, increasing blood pressure and all that. which then have their own effects, bad effects, has its own bad effects. But you do need some salt. And one way in which salt becomes important for health is the iodized salt. See, if you don't have iodine and you have iodine deficiency, you can end up with goiter, which is a swollen neck and so forth. You could have thyroid issues. And thyroid issues also affect people's moods and all that, particularly with women and also with men. So one way in which you can get your necessary amount of iodine is to take the iodized salt, which is what you will find in the grocery store. If you go to the area where they have salt, you will have iodized salt, and you can use a little bit of that iodized salt on a regular basis, and that will take care of the problem of iodine deficiency. Okay? So we don't want to just simply throw out all salt, because some of that salt which contains iodine, which is a trace mineral, is very useful. And iodine deficiency will affect your thyroid gland, because your thyroid gland needs iodine to produce thyroid hormones. And these hormones play a very important role in repairing your tissue, regulating your energy level, and promoting proper growth and development. The thyroid hormones also play a role in controlling body temperature, blood pressure, and heart rate. So we can't neglect the importance of taking that iodized salt in small quantities on a daily basis. There's been a study that looked at vegans and vegetarians, and it found that they are at a greater risk for iodine deficiency. Found that 25% of vegetarians and 80% of vegans had iodine deficiency. Now, this doesn't mean you have to go and eat meat or anything like that. You just have to take that iodized salt in moderate amounts, and that'll take care of it. Okay, moving on. It says, "Palikil pasu vennai nerittal palika vendum." So this is again the butter made from cow's milk, clarified butter, ney. Nerada pachathil nallennai. So nallennai is also emphasized, which is sesame seed oil. And the beneficial effects of sesame seed oil are all well documented. You just have to do a Google search. And now, of course, we have olive oil and sunflower oil that we can use. And so, we can complement it with other oils whose beneficial effects are all well documented. Then it says, "Vengayam vallai pundu siridai serka vendum," and then in another place it says you shouldn't use vengayam and vallai pundu. See the contradictions I'm talking about. Now, vengayam and vallai pundu in small quantities, moderate quantities, do have their beneficial effects. Garlic has beneficial effects. It is antifungal. It has a beneficial effect on infections. It helps to lower blood pressure. It has apparently beneficial effects on the heart. So, and onion, I think, has selenium and so forth, which is important. So, we can accept what it says here. Vengayam vallai pundu siridai serka vendum. Fine. Moving on. Kathirikai, eggplant, varekai, plantain, avarakai, murungai, which is drumstick moringa, which has now become a very fashionable superfood. Moringa, that's the murungakai, Peetkangai, kalyana pusanikai, pudalangai, tudalangai, kottavarekai, iவைகள் பதார்த்தம் செய்தல் கூடும். So what are these? Spelling that out in English. Murungai is the drumsticks. They call it drumsticks. It's the moringa. The moringa powder and so forth comes from murungai. And we have actually seed pods called drumsticks that are chopped up and cooked and added to sambar and so forth, soup-like thing in Indian cooking, especially South Indian Tamil Nadu cooking. And they have found that it's pretty rich in vitamin C. It's a good source of dietary fiber, potassium, magnesium, and manganese. It's a very nutritious food source throughout the year. And the Moringa maram leaves, the Moringa leaves, apparently are rich in iron, although, studies still have to confirm this, but, it's been proposed that, it's quite rich in iron, the Moringa maram leaves. Moving on to Kathirikai. That's the eggplant. It's, low in calories and sodium. But it's a rich source of dietary fiber, potassium, and B vitamins. So, it has a lot of antioxidants and minerals, Kathirikai, essential item in the Sutta Sanmargam vegetarian diet. And again, each of us has to kind of formulate a menu, including these things, maybe varying from day to day, and the time, whether you want to eat lunch and, maybe something a little bit for dinner and so forth, Avarakai is the lab, and it's also known as hyacinth bean, Egyptian kidney bean, Indian bean, and so forth. It gives good calories, and it contains iron, copper, and zinc. Serving size of 1 cup of avarakai gives you about 159 milligrams of magnesium, 233 milligrams of phosphorus, 15 grams of protein, and 78 milligrams of calcium, and so forth. So avarakai also is an essential vegetable that we can use. Peerkangai is the next one that was mentioned. It's the loofah, and it's popular in India, China, and Vietnam. And of course, in Tamil Nadu, southern India, it's called Peerkangai, and it's used to make kootu, a kind of dish, poriyal and togayal and so forth. I think the skin is also used to make chutney. And they say that this loofah, Peerkangai, is rich in antioxidants, minerals. Apparently, it's an excellent source of vitamin A and carbohydrates, as vitamin B5, manganese, potassium, B6, vitamin C, magnesium, and so forth. Next is Pusanikai pumpkin, whose health benefits have all been well documented. It's very rich in beta-carotene, and the body changes this into vitamin A. Vitamin A is essential for vision health or eye health. And it also strengthens the immune system. Apparently, it helps in the functioning of the heart, lungs, and kidneys. So pumpkin, also its seeds, leaves, and juices, all of them are rich in these vitamins and minerals. So Pusanikai is an essential element of the Sutta Sanmargam vegetarian diet. The next one that was mentioned is Pudalangai, snake gourd, also known as serpent gourd because it looks like a serpent, long and twisted. It belongs to the cucumber and squash family, and again has rich in proteins and fibers. It has high water content, and apparently provides a natural cooling effect on the body. If it's a regular part of your diet, then it provides vitamins and minerals like vitamin A, C, B6, vitamin E, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, zinc, and iron. Moving on to Pattavaraikai, which is the guar or cluster bean. It's also the source of guar gum. They are apparently very useful or beneficial in decreasing blood sugar levels and cholesterol levels. So if you're diabetic or you have high blood pressure, kottavarakkai might be an ingredient you want to consume regularly. And again, you don't want to fry it to death so that you lose the benefits of the vitamins and minerals. Cook it to the proper extent, so that it's neither raw nor overcooked. So those are some of the vegetables that are mentioned, and certainly we can include them because it's all supported by the information on their nutritional content, vitamin content, and health effects, beneficial health effects. So part of our Sanmargam vegetarian diet plan. Then, the Kurupikal under the Nitya Karma Vidhi section, bearing in mind that these are second-hand, third-hand notes, and we take whatever is supported by available information on nutrition, it mentions a bunch of greens. Now, of course, there's a lot of literature on the health benefits of greens. What it mentions is Karisalankannikkirai, Thoothulaikkierai, Munnaikkierai, Pasalaikkierai or spinach, and then Murungakkierai again, the leaves of the Moringa tree. And it says இவைகளை பருப்போடு சேர்த்தும் மிளகோடு சேர்த்தும் புளியிட்டும் தனித்தும் கறி செய்து கொள்ளக்கூடும். Well, I don't know about milagu, because, milagu does have some adverse effects on your stomach. Oh, milagu, yes, not milagai, but milagu, not chili, but milagu is black pepper, yes. So black pepper certainly works well, and paruppu, lentils. There is, in fact, a line from Vallalar's poems, Kirayum Paruppum Uruminane, where he basically says he likes the combination of kirai or greens and lentils. I've included that, and I can testify it does have an energizing effect. I mean, spinach, its health benefits have all been well documented. It has iron. It's the best cure for iron deficiency. May have to take some supplements, iron supplements a little bit, but spinach is very good for that, and has a bunch of other nutrients too. So, Karisalankannikkirai, Thoothulaikkierai, Munnaikkierai, Pasalaikkierai, and Murungakkierai, with lentils and black pepper added to it. Again, maybe siragam, cumin. Let's look at these things briefly. Karisalankannikkirai is the Eclipta prostrata, also known as false daisy, and Bringraj, that's the Hindi name for it, Sanskrit Bringraj, and it's a medicinal herb according to Ayurveda. It is considered to have a very beneficial effect on the liver. It cleans your liver. The oil is used for hair, but it has other benefits that are not generally acknowledged. Like I said, it's a liver cleanser, and it's also something that rejuvenates and slows down the aging process. So Bringraj is something to be taken very seriously, and it's, of course, Karisalankanni powder. Vallalar always recommends that you make a kind of suranam. You add some milk and some honey or sakare or sugar, and take it in that form. Some of the letters he's mentioned there. The next one is Thoothulaikkierai. Thoothulai is Solanum trilobatum, and I mentioned that, I think, in a talk I gave, an earlier talk. I pointed out that it has very beneficial effects on the respiratory system. And one of the things that I found here in Tamil, it says, மூச்சு பாதையில் இருக்கும் தொற்றுகளை அழித்து சுவாசத்தை சீராக்க தூதுவளை கொள்ள வேண்டும், which basically means that it's good for clearing the respiratory passages. That suggests that it could be an antidote to the coronavirus, which is an anti-respiratory virus. It attacks primarily the lungs, And Dudalai is very beneficial for the lungs. So, we can, maybe if you get the Dudalai leaves, you can make tea out of it, and drink it as tea. Or you can add it to salads or whatever, or you can crush it. That's one of the things Vallalar recommends: crush it, powder it, then mix it with some water and milk, add some sugar and drink it, and so forth. Munnaikkierai is Premna ceratifolia, and it's one of the 10 roots of herbs known as Dasamula, the 10 primary herbs, and is used in the Indian system of medicine. So Munnaikkierai, something to look into. It's not commonly known, but if you can get it, might be useful to use it. Now, Pachalaikkierai is spinach. It has vitamin K, vitamin A, vitamin C, iron, manganese, magnesium. Vitamin K is very important for bone health, and spinach is very rich in vitamin K. So that's what we normally understand by kierai, but there are other forms of kierai too, as we are seeing. Moringa drumstick leaves or moringa leaves, they have 7 times more vitamin C than oranges and 15 times more potassium than bananas. They also have calcium, protein, iron, and amino acids that help the body to heal and build muscle. They are also packed with the antioxidants that can protect you from cell damage and boost your immune system. So Moringa or leaves of the drumstick tree, moringa leaves, sometimes I think we can get them in packets in powder, crushed leaves or something, that could also be used. Now, moving on to lentils, it mentions பருப்பு வகைகளில் துவரம் பருப்பு, மிளகு சேர்த்து நெய் சேர்த்து கொள்ளுதல் கூடும். அந்த நெய்யை மிகவும் சேர்க்கப்படாது. Okay, that's fine. And it says மற்ற பருப்பு வகைகள் அவசியமல்ல, but that doesn't mean that you can't take other lentils, பருப்பு வகைகள் that are nutritious. So, anything that's nutritious in the பருப்பு வகைகள், lentils, legumes and so forth we can take. Now this thuram பருப்பு, this I've already mentioned, this thuram பருப்பு, the pigeon peas, apparently have an ability to stimulate growth, manage blood pressure, prevent anemia or thinning of the blood, and boost heart health. Other benefits include weight loss, improvement of digestion, strengthening the immune system, increasing energy, and eliminating inflammation. So thuram பருப்பு is certainly something we can take, and especially in combination with some of the கீரை வகைகள், should be really good as breakfast or lunch. Siru kattiri is also mentioned, and that could either mean small brinjal or small eggplant, or it could refer to a shrub. The shrub, the root of that shrub is said to be poisonous. So I think we're quite safe in taking siru kattiri to mean small brinjal. The eggplant you get is large in size, but there's also a smaller variety. So I think it would be safe to think to take this to mean that, because if you try and get the other one and you take the root, it's poisonous. And even the plant itself, the Capparis sapiaria is the evergreen shrub. Even the plant is considered toxic to grazing animals. So, and the root is said to be poisonous, and apparently the root powder is prepared to be used as a hunting poison. So you want to be careful in understanding what the siru kattiri means. I think, as I said, safe to understand it to refer to small eggplant or brinjal. Then avarai vatral. Some of these are recommended for the nighttime, and the nighttime food is required to be less, significantly less than the quantity, less than the daytime food. So something to keep in mind. Avarai vatral is fried hyacinth beans, and that has its benefits. So find that. Fried avarai can be taken, again, not to fry it too much so that it loses all its nutrition. So those are basically the main indications as to the kinds of vegetable fruits. I've already mentioned fruits, some sources of energy like sugarcane juice, honey, and the vegetables, and the lentils and the greens. So it kind of gives us an idea of how to construct our Siddha Sanmargam diet and take it from there. Anything that's complementary or supplementary can also be included. Now you're going to find contradictions. Just have to use common sense and critical thinking. For instance, in the Poduvidi, it says don't use neigh and don't use more. Buttermilk actually has well-documented benefits, especially when you use leaves, like karuvapalai and so on, mint and so on with more. It's very good. It's a probiotic. It helps your digestion. Parupu vagai and neigh you should not take, it says later on, which flat out contradicts what it said earlier. So when it says on the one hand, this really tells us that these notes are some of them are just simply concoctions without any sense at all. Somebody just wrote something, And I don't know why Balakrishna Pillai included all of this nonsense. Didn't he see the contradiction? He was in fact in philosophy, so should have helped him to use his logic and see that, you can't possibly include these kinds of contradictory things. But, okay, on the one hand it said neigh and then now, and parupu, and then now it's saying don't take parupu again and neigh. You just have to use common sense. As I said, in the case of more, we know that it has beneficial effects, and we certainly can take more. And neigh, again, in moderate quantity, and parupu vage, already it recommended, thuram parupu and so forth. So we just have to simply reject these other statements that contradict it. In fact, it also says null and neigh you shouldn't take and so forth. Earlier it had said that if you don't have neigh, you can use null and neigh, which is sesame seed oil, and the beneficial effects of sesame seed oil are well documented. Just use Google search. Okay, so this is just another example of what I said. So somebody, if you listen to somebody just picking this thing completely without reading the other stuff and saying, oh no, Nalane is not allowed in Sutta Sanmargam, you have to pose the question, where are you getting this from? Oh, I got it from this Ithikalmagudi. Well, but there are other statements there that say that you can use Nalane. But regardless of that, let us just simply use the available information on Nalane or sesame seed oil. Is it good for us or not? It is good. So, doesn't matter what sort of absurd claims are made in this Upadesa Purupigal. We have to just follow the evidence, the available information. There are a couple of other things. Some other spice, two other spices are mentioned. Vendayam or fenugreek, which has beneficial effects, especially if you are diabetic. It helps, along with other things, to control blood sugar. And perungayam, asafoetida, which has very beneficial effects in stimulating digestion. So I use those, and yeah, certainly we can use those. And then it contradicts again. It says, Vengayam, Vallai Poondu, Mudalana Vegalai Thalli Pusittal. Earlier it said, Siridalavu you can take Vengayam and garlic. Now it's saying you should not. So, well, how do we resolve this? Well, take a look at whether Vengayam and Vallai Poondu are beneficial. They are beneficial, but then again, they can produce some irritation or whatever in the stomach if you, well, of course you have to boil them, or fry them to a reasonable extent, especially the garlic. But, moderate amounts you can add and you can take. So, we're not dealing with anything that's contrary to Jivagarnya Vurukam. And as long as we're not dealing with anything contrary to Jivagarnya Vurukam, then nutrition should be our main guide, whether it's going to keep the body healthy and strong. And then, of course, we can also take into account, we can make it tasty, If it does not affect the nutritional part of it, there's nothing wrong in adding some of the things Vallalar recommended, like sakkare or karkande or vellam, vellapagu, some of the spices, siragam, milage, as appropriate, and of course honey and well-boiled milk and so forth. So the considerations of taste come into play when we have taken care of the nutrition requirement and the Jivagarmyan requirement. Once those two conditions are met, yeah, it's fine what you do with the taste, what you do to make it tasty, as long as it doesn't affect or diminish the nutrition content. So anyway, those are some of the essential things in a Suddha Samargam vegetarian diet, and we can certainly find other complementary things. And I think it would be a good thing to actually draw up, as I said. And I'm probably going to be working on this, and hopefully in the not too distant future, come up with a dietary book based on these Suddha Samargam principles and some of these indications. And then developing that, because we've got a lot of new information due to the developing science of nutrition, and these are just scattered remarks, second-hand and third-hand remarks, some of which are useful, as we've seen, but nothing like, it wasn't meant to be some kind of catalog or exhaustive account of the Parupu Vagaigal, the Para Vagaigal, the vegetables that are important to keep the body healthy and strong. So there's still a lot of room for development, and when we take into account some of those principles about moderate quantity, the intervals, reasonable intervals, wait until the food is digested before eating further, eat only when you're hungry, and so forth. Make sure that you're not too slow or too fast in eating. All of those things combined, I think, give us a good idea of how to approach the practice of vegetarian diet in Suddha Samargam. Not only what that would consist of, but also how you would go about consuming this vegetarian diet. And it's one of the essential elements in the Suddha Samargam lifestyle. Food is, of course, essential for the body and its health. And what we are seeing from some of these recommendations is that the vegetables, fruits, and so forth, and spices, like Malagu Siragam, they all help to maintain the health of the body. Food is not just to satisfy hunger or satisfy taste. Food is actually a kind of medicine to maintain the body's health and strength and its immunity against disease. This comes out very clearly in some of the remarks that Vallalar has made about food. So we should be grateful for that, and as I said, each of us should kind of formulate a dietary plan and put it into practice, and share the information and any observed benefits with the rest of the Siddha Sanmargam community. So with that, I will end this, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to take it.
Thank you very much, Doctor. It was a very informative talk today. A lot of things covered from what Vallalar said and what is mentioned in Urainarai, and a lot of good insight as well, from both scientific perspective and common sense approach. And thanks for touching almost all the food that were referred by Vallalar and what is mentioned in Urainarai. Along with that, you gave its benefits too, along with the English names. Thank you very much, Doctor.
You're welcome.
I'll read the disclaimer and then we can open up the lines for the Q&A session. Disclaimer. Vallalar Universal Mission is headed by Thiru Pradasa Vallalar, and the organization is open to one and all. There is no discrimination due to caste, religion, philosophy, race, color, language, age, sex, or any other differences. This organization will follow the principles of Vallalar's Sutta Sanmarga Samarasa Satya Sangam and will consider them as fundamental and the greatest of all. We request all our participants and the speakers to stick on to the principles of Vallalar in their discussions. One must be aware that the opinion of the speaker is not necessarily the opinion of Vallalar Universal Mission. All the speakers are free to deliver their messages and opinions, and all the other participants are free to either support or deny the speaker's opinion. However, everyone must refrain themselves from hurtful words and show love and respect to each other during their discussion. Thank you, everyone. Hold on 1 second. Let me open up the line.
Hello. Hello, Doctor.
Yes. Who's this?
This is I am from Canada, Narmada. Hello? Yeah.
What's your name, Narmada?
Narmada, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, please to hear you speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. You said so many vegetables about we are eating to be healthy. But I have a small doubt. We are staying in here. Means you can't get good quality of vegetables here. Here all have pesticide foods. Then we are taking nuts. Is the nuts is a fatty food or it's a veg kind food? Nuts or?
What is the thing about the fat? What were you saying about that? Well, I understood the first question was about the kinds of vegetables that are available in North America.
Yeah, but we are staying here. We can't available all kinds of vegetables here. Then we are taking nuts. Nuts is related to the veggie or it is a fatty or non-veg type food, sir.
I'm sorry. That part I didn't quite catch or understand.
Doctor, I think Narmada was asking if nuts can be replaced, or no, veggie can be replaced with nuts.
Yeah.
And she's asking if nuts are vegetarian
or
nuts, non-vegetarian.
Okay, I couldn't catch that.
Nuts are related to the vegetarian foods or non?
Yeah. I didn't catch the part about nuts, so it wasn't clear to me. Certainly nuts are part of vegetarian food. And they're like seeds, and Vallalar says in Jivagarnya Workam that it's not contrary to consume seeds and leaves. So nuts would be in the same category. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's not addressed in the Nitya Karma Vidhi, which are second-hand and third-hand notes once again. But there may be something there that Vallalar passed on to the cooks in the Satya Dharma Salai. As it turns out. But I'm very glad you brought that up because I also had overlooked that. But the one thing that would support nuts is Vallalar's reference to Vidai. You can take seeds, and that's not contrary to Jivagarmya Varukam, because the seeds in themselves don't have life. They have to be planted in the soil, and even when you plant them in the soil, they don't automatically germinate. There have to be other conditions, and once they germinate and they start sprouting, then of course you don't destroy it. But seed form is fine, and with the case of pumpkin and so forth, pumpkin seeds are also rich in nutrients, so we can take pumpkin seeds, peanuts, almonds, and so forth, pistachio nuts and so forth. So yeah, the nuts are very important. But they're not a substitute for anything, but they're just another essential aspect of the vegetarian diet. And I'm very glad you brought that up, because I had overlooked nuts. So thank you for bringing that up. The other part about the vegetables, well, you have to look at what vegetables are available, like broccoli, for instance. Of course, there is no we can't assume that the scattered second-hand and third-hand notes in the Nitya Karma Vidhi and so on is anything like a catalog. No, it's not a catalog. Just some suggestions. Perhaps Vallalar made some of them to the cooks in the Satya Dharma Salai. But as I said, we have to develop based on that. And so broccoli, for instance, is not obviously mentioned. But broccoli is very healthy. It's apparently plays an important role in counteracting any tendencies towards cancer and so forth. It's an anti-carcinogenic. We can find broccoli, then tomatoes. Tomatoes are not mentioned here, but we can take tomatoes. So we can just expand the list based on two considerations. One, the vegetable, you're getting the vegetable by not destroying the plant. That's the first important condition. And the second, and there are many vegetables that are available of that sort. You don't destroy the plant. And the second consideration is, of course, the nutritional content of the vegetables. So the short answer to your question is, we'll take vegetables that are available, that have been obtained without killing the plants. And if we find that they are going to keep the body healthy by providing any of the essential vitamins and minerals, we take them. And then with the nuts, it's also the same thing. And once again, I know I'm repeating myself. Thank you for bringing up the question of nuts. Certainly needs to be incorporated in the Suddha Sanmargam vegetarian diet. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
So, Doctor, this is Gopi. I have a question. You mentioned that egg is a vegetarian. I know it's kind of a controversial topic, but I just wanted to understand your rationale behind, how you concluded.
I explained it. I said that there's nothing controversial. The eggs that you find in the stores, they do not contain a developing embryo. Now, in the Sutta Saiva Unavu and so forth, traditionally, and even you find among Brahmin families, vegetarian Brahmin families in Tamil Nadu, although the Brahmins in Bengal, for instance, they eat fish, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, I believe he was a Brahmin, just speaking of his social background, and he used to eat fish. But the Brahmins in Tamil Nadu, they don't, eat fish, but they also avoid eggs. So it's a tradition, I know that, but I think it's based on a misconception that the muttai has some developing creature. Now, of course, there are eggs that the hen sits on, they get hatched and become chicken. We're not eating those type of hens in the grocery store. So the rationale is simply that it would be contrary to Jiva Karunyam only when you are consuming something and destroying a living being in the process. When you eat eggs, you are not destroying any living being, because there is no living being in these eggs in the grocery stores. Okay? So, it's a pretty straightforward rationale. I don't see what's controversial about it. It is no living being, therefore when you boil the egg, you are not killing any living being. Of course, a living being, a hen, has given that egg. Well, for that matter, the living being cow also gives you milk. And you don't reject milk simply because that living being has given it to you, as long as you're not killing it to get the milk. So, anyway, go ahead. Sorry. You had a question?
No, I was just trying to understand more. Are you saying that the eggs laid here doesn't hatch, or they made it in such a way that the eggs don't hatch?
Yeah, this is again, people don't know this, which is kind of surprising. The eggs that you find in the grocery store do not contain a developing embryo. They are what are called unfertilized eggs. You see? So that's the fundamental distinction between fertilized eggs on which the hen is sitting and a chicken is going to come out of that, and unfertilized eggs. And all of these eggs that you find in the grocery store are unfertilized eggs, meaning there is no living being that's developing in it. So it just comes down to just understanding the distinction between these two types of eggs, and the fact that what you find in the grocery store is an unfertilized egg. There is no living being developing there, and it's never going to come out as a chicken. That's an essential fact that we have to understand. And once you understand that, then automatically it follows that you're not killing a living being by eating that egg, which is unfertilized. So, of course, if the hen is sitting on an egg and it's fertilized, and you go and you destroy it, then you are killing a living being that was developing in that egg. That's a fertilized egg. But that's not the kind of egg that you find in the stores. Those are unfertilized eggs. There is no embryo. There's no living being developing there. And therefore, there is no himsai or action contrary to jivakarunyam in consuming these eggs. They just rot. You just throw them on the ground. It's the yellow and the yolk and everything. There's no embryo that's developed. Okay? So, if you understand that those are unfertilized eggs, then you're going to see there's nothing contrary to Jivakarunya workam in taking them.
Okay, thanks, Dr. And one more question. You said elephant yam, right? Elephant foot yam. Does it refer to both Senikiranga and Karnikiranga? Is it both same, or does it have a difference? You're breaking up a little bit. Karnikiranga, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the difference between Senikiranga and Karnikiranga, and its English name, is it referred as elephant foot yam for both, or just one of that?
Well, it's actually saying that it's the same thing. What we call Karnikiranga is also called Senikiranga. There may be a slight difference. I don't know. I don't know if it's like wari and the plantain, and the banana. They are just two types of bananas. But my understanding is it's the same thing. It's saying that the elephant foot yam, apparently it's also called Kara Karnikiranga in Tamil, or Senikiranga.
Okay.
These are just two names for the same thing.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Doctor.
Okay.
Hello, Doctor.
Hello?
I am Kamivanan from Chennai.
Yes, how are you?
I am fine. It's a good time to speak with that you have mentioned all the details in the Situation Morgan. It's very nice to hear. And you have mentioned that that cow milk is a very good news. That in Situation Morgan, Agaravalathe in Ubadesha Kurikuval, Vallalar are mentioned that Sitta Sanmarga Satyargal Ney Mudale Vastukal Kollapadade. சாதகர்களும் ஒருவாறு கொல்லப்படும் ஏனெனில் ஒரு தேகத்தில் உள்ள தாதுக்களில் முதல் தாது கொழுப்பு, அதன் அம்சமே பால், அதன் அம்சமே நெய். மேற்படி ஆபாசம் மோர் தயிர் ஆதலால் மேற்படி கொழுப்பு வெளிப்பெடியும் நேரும். அதனால் கொலை கன்றுக்கு ஒருவாறு விட்டு பாலை கிரகிக்கலாம். இத்தால் ஜீவ இம்சை நேர்களால் மேற்படி வஸ்துக்கள் கொள்ளலாகாது, நேராத பட்சத்தில் கொள்ளலாம். But you have mentioned that Jiva Karmyam we can drink milk. That's very good news that you have mentioned in the Vallalar in Upadesha Group. And one thing that you have mentioned that
yes. So you
from cow we are getting.
Sorry, go ahead.
From cow we are getting milk, but Vallalar have mentioned here we can drink milk by giving that milk first to the kandru, that is the calf, and then we can drink the milk. That's what something good news.
Right. If you have a cow, yeah, thank you for pointing that out. But I think you must have heard what I said about Upadesha Kurupago. These are not Vallalar's writings, nor are they people that we know were close to Vallalar, like Appasamy Setyar, and then there was Purushottam Reddy, in whose house Vallalar was staying, and then the other people. These notes are not written. We don't know who wrote them, and we cannot assume that they just wrote down what they heard directly from Vallalar. It could have been somebody writing, as Balakrishna Pillai also acknowledges. Somebody heard someone else say that they heard Vallalar say this and so forth. That's why you have a lot of nonsense, and I've already given you some examples. But where they make some sense, yeah, we can consider them. And your point that if I have a cow and a calf, and I'm taking milk from the cow, I have to first ensure that the calf is fed with the cow's milk. I absolutely agree. That would be what Jivakarniya Workam requires me to do. I agree. But then, we get a lot of things, and we don't quite know the circumstance. No, but for that matter, fruits and vegetables we get, we don't know how many insects got killed and so forth. But we can't refrain from fruits and vegetables for that reason. But, I think this issue came up last time. You have to look at farms, dairy farms, that are engaging in humane treatment of cows. And if you find one, more or less compared to the others, then you take from those. And again, reduce the quantity. I only get a carton, which lasts me for, it's probably 2 cartons a week or less than that, and I get the 2%, fat-free stuff, 2% reduced fat. But what you're saying is a valid point, and I think Prasanna also raised the same issue, and I agree. If you know that there is some kind of abusive practice, then we should not take milk from that source, or we should try to change their practice by the threat of boycott, which is what many people have done. A lot of changes are taking place in dairy farms, at least in the United States. I don't know what's going on in India, but these changes have been brought about by activists pointing out the mistreatment of cows and calves. And, there are these small family-owned dairy farms that are now coming up, organic dairy farms, and they have better practices. So we should support them, when you have these kinds of businesses that are coming up and they are treating the cows and calves better, then we have to support and buy from them. So, I don't know if I'm addressing anything that you've said. I think I am, but you tell me.
Okay, that's nice. And another question that you have mentioned, we can eat egg. Where Vallalar has been told to eat it, can you where you all get that things? Are you telling from where? That's what I want to hear. You told we can eat egg. I do not know, so I'm asking you something that I want to know. That thing, small thing only.
Yeah, I'm not sorry. I'm sorry, I'm not catching it. Gopi, can you tell me what the question is?
I think it's the same question, Doctor. I think what he's asking is where did Vallalar mention that eggs can be consumed?
Eggs.
That's what he's asking.
Vallalar doesn't mention that you have to consume broccoli. He doesn't mention red lentils. So many things Vallalar didn't mention. Again, we have to know that the Upadesa Kurpigal, or just second hand and third hand, I've been repeating that, notes, we don't know where they came from, and they're not exhaustive. There are so many things. As I said, Vallalar actually had planned a lot of things, and I read some of the planned works that he mentions in one of his letters. Let me take a quick look there. He does mention Ilakkana Vritti, Andavalakam, Pindavalakam. Probably he may have, if he had completed Pindavalakam, which has to do with the body, if he had completed that, and maybe even Sadhana Valakam and Sanmarga Valakam, he might have elaborated, but these were, due to our misfortune, he didn't get to complete or even start on them. But Vallalar has not said that, but nor has Vallalar prohibited it. So it basically means Vallalar has not addressed the issue. So we have to simply ask ourselves, we have to apply his test. And his main test is IMSAI. Okay? If you are causing suffering and killing a living being and eating its flesh, that's IMSAI agaram, that's tamasiga agaram, and contrary to jivagarnya workam. I suppose he agrees with that, or you agree with that, sir? So apply the test to the eggs, and again, we shouldn't imagine wrongly that those eggs in the grocery store are containing living beings. They don't. They are unfertilized eggs. By definition, there is no developing embryo. So, since there is no living being, you are not killing life when you consume those eggs. Therefore, there is no violation of Jivagarnya Workam. The tradition of Saiva Unavu and so forth, they refrained, and the Brahmins and so forth, they refrained from Muttai because they thought all Muttai was fertilized. All Muttai had chicken, and by consuming the egg, you are actually consuming something that's developing into a chicken. But that's only the case of fertilized eggs. So back again to the fundamental difference between fertilized and unfertilized eggs. The ones in the grocery store are unfertilized eggs. And so it's okay. And there's another thing Vallalar mentions about asuttam. And he says tattva vritti and tadu vritti. If you don't have those, then there is no asuttam. What does tattva vritti and tadu vritti mean? It means organic development of bodily organs. Okay? If you take a fertilized egg and you boil it, or, sometimes you find some Asians, Chinese and so forth, they will boil a lobster. Okay? Live lobster they will boil and they will eat it. Obviously, that lobster is a living being, and they are causing IMSAI, and that's tamasiga agaram. But, and if you do it with fertilized eggs, obviously you are killing the developing chicken. That's contrary to Jivagarnya Workam. But unfertilized eggs, Vallalar has not addressed the question of this distinction because he has not addressed the topic at all. And, it was obvious to him that he says, Muttaiwai Parulum Muru Uyir Tiragale Atame Katarul Aruparinjodi. You remember that? From Aruparinjodi Agaval? Muttaiwai Parulum Muru Uyir Tiral. So that's talking about fertilized egg. where there is a living being developing. It could be a bird or an ostrich or a chicken or whatever. Yeah. Destroying that egg is destroying a living being. And contrary to Jivakarya Hukam, I don't know if anybody actually does that. Certain animals do that. They'll go and kill these living beings in the eggs and eat them, but that's Mirga Vargam. That's a different niyati for them. For us to consume unfertilized egg, we are not killing any living being. There's no living being there, therefore it's not contrary to Jivakarya Hukam.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. From yours, I got so many details about Citizen Morgan, the vegetarian food, and somewhat you also mentioned some items we can use, use, and we cannot use some items in some places. We have to use a small quantity, like that uppu, salt, and the puli. That you have mentioned some words, Vallalar told that we cannot use it. That also mentioned in today's ritual. That's a good news from you. And giving all the details of that items and that nutritions, it's very nice to hear. In the step by step you mentioned all the details are very useful for me and who heard all these things. Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. Yes, there's so many benefits there that, as I said, if we draw up a plan of diet, hopefully, and we follow other things, Sudarshan Margam will help us to maintain our health and strength of body. So we have to be grateful to Vallalar for emphasizing all these things. Thank you for your comments and questions.
Thank you, Doctor. And another question, somewhat many Satyavas are telling we cannot use sugar and salt, but somewhat in Uranada Tagdi mentioned that we can use little bit. We have to use only the not chakra and Panavallam, Panagarkande. We should avoid totally sugar. Somewhat in YouTube also, some doctors also mentioned. Do not use sugar. You can give some details about that, sir?
Yes. On these matters, remember, we have to simply look at the available scientific information and the dietary science and so forth. It's quite clear that salt has all kinds of harmful effects. Brain needs sugar, but then, if I'm diabetic, obviously it's a special circumstance, so we have to consider those things. But he keeps emphasizing sakare and pain. I find that there is a pretty good solid scientific basis for it, which is when you read about the brain, you see it really demands glucose. And these things provide that in some form. So, he himself, according to Thalur Vela the Madhiyar, when he drank hot water, he used to add some sugar to it, which then actually is a source of glucose, you see. So, we all know this already. He was a great jnani. He was a man of great intelligence. And again, it's our misfortune, our loss of punyam, that he didn't complete all those works. If he had completed, then we would be in a much better position. And I think, I have to mention that because Siddhi Day is January 30th when he decided to withdraw and depart from his physical body, there were problems there. There was some kind of power struggle going on. He himself mentioned Singa Vandirkaral Ellam Adigaram Seyya Vandirkaradu. That means, and also he wrote to Appasamy Settiyar in the Salayar Enakku Migum Salikundagindrudu. So these things indicate something was going on there, and he had in fact closed the Satyajnana Sabha. And he kept the key because, he was uncompromising on the standards. And he said, you guys are not following the instructions. You're not even attempting to follow the values of Sudarshan Margam, And I came here and I gave you these things, Karai Tarandeen, but nobody has come to buy the things that I want to give. So, all that may have contributed, it's just my extra commentary if you'll bear with me. His decision to withdraw from his body, but then a consequence of that was he couldn't get to completing all these different books that he mentioned, Sanmarga Valakkam, Sadhana Valakkam, Anda Valakkam, Pinda Valakkam, and all that. Had he not decided to withdraw from his body, there would be a lot more of Sudarshan Margam and its development at the time. What happened was, after he departed from the physical body, it all basically shut down, with the exception of the Satya Dharma Sali. And the story about Kribananda Warrior seeing the Satyajnana Sabai in a very dilapidated condition, damaged condition, and then he decided to reconstruct it, and later Mahalingam also helped, the industrialist, and brought it to its present form, though I think that they messed around with its design and color. I think originally it probably had white and yellow. But in any case, that's what happened around the time of his passing. So we have to just rely on the writings that are available that we know to be authentic, which are the Jivagarnya Workam and the Aruparinjodi Agaval and the Vinnapangal. So we should only take whatever is there in the Vedesa Kurupagal that agrees with the rest, and then, on other things, like Ms. Narmada from Canada pointed out, or implied, there are vegetables here that we have to look at and take them for their nutritional value, health benefits, whatever, and fruits. For example, pomegranates. Pomegranates are not mentioned. There's so many fruits that are not mentioned by Vallalar. They're not mentioned in these notes. But that's not a reason for us not to take them, like raspberries and blueberries, The berry family is a very important source of energy and enzymes. And we can incorporate all of this. And, the wonderful thing here is the vegetarian diet is inexpensive. You can get by on a vegetarian diet quite comfortably in North America or in any of the Western countries, and at the same time protect your health. Especially in America, if you end up in a hospital, you're probably going to end up broke. They've got a very bad healthcare system here, Although they are one of the richest countries in the world, they don't have anything like universal healthcare. Even poor countries like Mexico and the Philippines have it. But we don't, and Canada has it, and European countries have it, but we don't have it here in the United States. So it becomes all the more important to focus very carefully on food and make sure that we eat food that keeps us healthy and strong, and I presume that's also applicable in India. But anyway, thank you for your comments and your appreciation.
Thank you, Doctor.
Good morning, Doctor. Prasanna here. Doctor, you had given a lot of references and clear examples of for each one of the things that Vallalar had given from Agavan. Thank you so much, Doctor. Doctor, actually, there is a question from our friend, one of our friend in who is watching in YouTube. His name is Ravi Kumar Yasan. So let me read out what he has asked for. Dear Doctor, good morning and good evening in India. By following vegetarian diet alone, can someone attain deathlessness?
Yes. I had mentioned that, I remember I referred to a Facebook post that I saw that basically mentioned these Kile Vagegal and Kuranga and so forth from these notes, second hand and third hand. I have to keep repeating that. and said that we can conquer death by that. Well, no, they will not prevent death. The only thing that will help us to overcome death and attain the Maranamilla Peruvar is Arul. Arul is the only thing, and to obtain that Arul, we have to keep doing the Karavul Varipade, Jodi Varipade, and Jivagarnya Workam. Aruperum Jodi Sindhanai and Jivagarnya Workam. We have to keep practicing that. These foods help us to maintain the body. Maintain the body in health and strength, and ward off diseases, because some of them really help the immune system. So they will protect the body, and as I said, they may even help in prolonging the aging process or delaying the aging process. Sorry, and give you energy. Many of these fruits, honey and so forth, and well-boiled milk and all that will give you that. But no, I don't think there's any evidence to think that Suddha Sanmarga Unavu by itself will prevent death.
Okay, doctor. And he also has a comment on using sugar. So he mentioned, like, the doctor in Vallalar's period, no white sugar. Vallalar mentioned only about powder jaggery as sarkarai, like sarkarai pongal, and then now we specifically call it as a natu chakarai.
Yeah, but again, I don't know if he's scorned by some strange notes in the Upadesa Kurupugal. I'm going by the Agavam, which we have in Vallalar's own handwriting, and he's speaking of Sakkarai Thiral and Karkande. And even some of the Upadesa Kurupugal says you can add some Sakkarai and so forth. But Vellam is now recognized as Karkande is a better alternative to Sakkarai. I also pointed out, I think they said that the rock candy is a better substitute for what was that, processed sugar or unfiltered sugar or something like that. And we know that Vellam or jaggery is even better. It's called brown sugar. And I believe it's derived from Vellam. So yeah, we should prefer brown sugar or Vellam, as a better health alternative. But there's no harm in taking Karkande if you don't have diabetes, or even if you have diabetes, you can take it in small amounts. Karkande, because again, it gives that boost to your brain. Sugar. But depends on the person's condition and so forth. But if the point is that jaggery or Vellam would be preferable to Sakkarai, yeah, I agree with that.
Hello, good morning, doctor. This is Raji.
Yeah, Raji, how are you?
Yeah, good, doctor. Thanks a lot for your wonderful explanation about vegetarian diet. I heard only after 10:30. I think half of the only I can listen because I went somewhere else. So after that, I listening like seeragam, milagi, iodized salt. So many things you are telling about our beneficials for our health, like cow's milk, sunflower oil, olive oil, வெங்காயம் பூண்டு சிறிதளவாவது சேர்த்துக்கணும் சொல்லி that's some of them they said don't take the ney or something like that, but we can consume little bit is okay for our health like that. So you mentioned about all the katrika, avaraka, so many vegetables, it's really benefit for us. Greens like keerai vagigal, lentils like that. So fruits we can take. My question is, some of the people were telling fruits we can't take with the food. So my question is, after meal or before meal we can take the fruits, doctor?
Well, if it's evening and you are taking light food, and remember one of the guidelines which is sensible, I think it says that your night food has to be light. And, there are yogis that have prescribed just milk, and I plus, hot milk. By milk, we are not talking about cold milk, hot milk, well-boiled milk, and fruits, basically as your night food. Well, if you take light food, then let's say you take 2 chapatis or 4 chapatis or something with dal, then you can a little fruit salad to go along with it, adding some milk, hot milk to the fruit salad. That should be fine, The main thing is not to overload the stomach. That's the main consideration. I don't think there's any basis to think that you should eat fruits first or after. Well, if you eat first, that might reduce your appetite, which may be a good thing in some way. Or if you take, the only thing is, if you take after you eat food, you got to make sure you're not too full with the food, because then if you take food, that's going to be an increased amount for your digestive system to deal with. So that's the only consideration. But if you take light food, you can always take fruit salad, particularly of the mukkani, but you can add other things too. It doesn't, but to be good, try out that pala, plantain, and mambaram, you can get that,
Yes.
Add some hot milk and some honey, Talking about it already has made me hungry. Okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Doctor. That's why, we are using the vegetarian diet like so many vegetables and so many fruits, so many greens. That's why India is reducing the COVID, I think, because they are using these are all things naturally. I think that's why.
I hope so, Raji, because there is a lot of increase of non-vegetarianism in India. And a lot of people even brag that they eat chicken and, meat and this and that. But don't forget that next to the United States, India has the highest number of COVID-19 cases. First comes the United States, the world champion. It has the highest number, millions, 25 something up. And then the next country in the list is India, and then I think is Brazil. So, India still has a lot of COVID-19 cases, and let's hope it doesn't increase. It doesn't increase. But for us, looking around at what's going on, the outbreak in the meat farms and chicken farms and all that, but on top of it all, just Jivakarnya work and the fact that Vallalar was absolutely right. It turns out when he said or implied that vegetarian food is enough to keep the body healthy and strong. We know that now.
Yes, Doctor. So many people are eating non-veg too in India, so that's why some of them getting COVID, I think.
Yeah, it could be, and if not that, they have all kinds of health issues. It's well documented. Meat, cholesterol, and high blood pressure. Cancer has also been connected to meat, and so forth. So, and fish, they catch them in lakes and rivers and seas, which are all polluted, and that's probably causes cancer, stomach cancer, colon cancer, and this and that. So, Vallalar's great path gives us a way to protect our body and its health and strength, provided we also pay attention to the other factors which I mentioned, and which can be taken up on another occasion. And some of the Upadesa Kurupikal do make some useful points, whether or not it came directly from Vallalar. They make some useful points about those other things like Bayam and all that, Tuka, Nitire and all that. So, we have to combine our vegetarian diet with those things to maintain health, So, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Doctor. Because here we can get the natural greens like, Moringa Kire like that. But in India, they can get the natural Kirai vagigal like that. So that's why I was thinking.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Being in India does have some benefits. But here now you can get the Moringa powder. You see, Moringa powder. Basically, Moringa leaves crushed into powder. And you can find them in health food stores. Now it's almost like a craze with moringa. It's fashionable now.
Yeah, I'm using them, doctor. I bought it from Amazon, moringa powder. So I think it has 2 days I'm using that, doctor. So it's really beneficial.
Actually, in my place, I'm able to get moringa kiri.
Yeah, because your place is not that much cold, so I think everything.
Right, yes.
Right. Well, your southern diet, as you know, Gopi, the vendakai, the bindi or okra, that's also very good. I remember my mother used to make vendakai, and she used to say, when I had a math test or something in school,
yes.
she used to make vendakai, and she says it's good for your brain, So, we can look into that too, okra. I mean, it's not mentioned in Ubadesa Kurupigal, but then as I said, there's a lot of things not mentioned, but we can find out and include on our own,
Yes. We always grown in our garden, like, summertime, doctor, all the vegetables, like you said, okra and brinjal and everything. Pirkangai, everything. And sorakai, pirkangai, everything we planted in our garden. So,
here in the United States?
No, here, doctor, in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's wonderful, Raji. That's wonderful. I got to think about that too. Right now, I've got a lemon tree. Oh, by the way, Elumiche param is also very good lemon. Especially it helps to keep the blood in a good condition. And Elumiche is not mentioned, but then, as I said, just because something is not mentioned, it doesn't mean anything. We can find out. So I've got lemon tree. That gives me good lemon, and I always add lemon. And it's actually a very good replacement for salt. Provided you take some iodized salt every day, because you don't want to end up with iodine deficiency. But for the most part, since the Ubadesa Kurupigal are right on track in saying that you should reduce salt, we can instead use this lemon juice, to make the food tasty. So that's a good alternative.
Yeah, what about the pink salt, doctor? Pink salt, that's what we are using now.
Oh, the Himalayan salt?
Himalayan pink salt, yes. You
can use that, use reduced amounts, but, the important thing is you don't get iodine deficiency, because if you get iodine deficiency, your thyroid glands will be affected, and that's going to create a bunch of problems. So you want to always keep, the iodized salt, which is what I have right next to my stove, and I always sprinkle some every time I make something to eat, which requires salt. So, you may want to get iodized salt, and you can use it in conjunction with the Himalayan salt, but don't neglect the iodine, because the iodine deficiency can create problems.
Oh, okay, doctor. Okay. Thank you so much, doctor.
Thank you.
Doctor, thanks for bringing in that iodized salt topic. I hear that we should not consume more iodized salt. I don't know where I hear, but after hearing that, we stopped buying iodized salt. I just buy the regular ones. Is it something that too much consumption? I know, everything moderation is good, but I don't have much information on iodized salt. Is it good or?
Well, they say that there is again, if you don't take iodized salt at all, then that's not a good decision. And again, it's not my opinion. That's what the experts are saying. You can look up WebMD and so on, helpline.com. And what they're saying is, if you don't take any iodized salt at all, then unless you are consuming something that has iodine in it, then you're at the risk for iodine deficiency. And remember, the thyroid gland needs to make thyroid hormones, and it needs iodine. And this becomes apparently very critical when you're dealing with children. or growing, so forth. They need iodine, and the iodized salt is a readily available form of getting iodine. Of course, in moderate amounts, So that's what the opinion is, medical opinion. So it may be better to have some iodized salt and sprinkle something, and then maybe use lemon juice or something along with it.
Okay, thanks, doctor. I think I have to switch to again buying iodized once in a while, or maybe like 50-15.
Right. Take a look at WebMD. There are the two articles that I found, and on that basis, I express those views on it. So, healthline.com and then WebMD, they tell you about the importance of iodized salt.
Okay. Thank you, doctor.
Doctor, I'm Mangalam பேசுறேன்.
Yes, vanakkam.
பூசணி வெள்ளை பூசணி மஞ்சள் பூசணி இருக்குங்க. கிட்னிக்கு நல்லதுன்னு சொன்னீங்க. கிட்னிக்கு நல்லதுங்களா அது?
ஆமா, அதான் இருக்கு இன்ஃபர்மேஷன். I think பூசணிக்காய், even the பூசணிக்காய் விதை or seed, also you can, take after drying it and frying it. Yes, it's actually beta carotene and கண்ணுக்கு நல்லது, and kidneys. Yes, kidneys are also mentioned. So yes, that's correct.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
But does it say it's the white pusni or the orange one, doctor? Or is it like both?
Kalyana Pusanikai was mentioned. I think that's the full thing, but I couldn't find any relevant difference here. So any pumpkin will do. I mean, the standard pumpkin is orange, right, in its color. So maybe that's what Kalyana Pusanikai refers to. Yeah,
that's my understanding too.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor.
Yes?
That you mentioned all the things that the kulirna kolli, teekudu, muttikkundu, that the medicine you have mentioned, and somewhat extra Marthu Kurukul, Vallalar mentioned in Education Kurukul, that is Marthu Kurukul, Irumalakke, Visanasukkai, and Meliho, Sukilakedeke, Ponangani, and Nirkovai, Vadapitta, Abasa, Malapandamukte, Sukku, and Dagavali to getting Elugo. That is pepper, black pepper. Somewhat extra something was mentioned in Martha Gurukul that I want to share with you. So I told them. Thank you, doctor. And one thing I asked in another Satyasaram, that we are cutting beef, from that only we are getting the rice we are eating. That is also not there. And one Sanmarga told, if you put the rice in mud, sand, it will grow. But we will cut the animal, we cannot put it in hard, it will not grow. So we have to avoid that non-veg and we use only that vegetarian food. That's what you mentioned. And one nice thing you were told that while growing that rice, we are putting the chemicals and destroying the insects. And that one, now one day I heard from you, that thing, that they are doing them some bad things for that insects. In future we have to avoid that things. You mentioned that we have to grow our own food in our area itself, in our house itself. That's a good news from your summary that you have mentioned. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you. But what I would say, Aya, is that when you read these things in the Kurupukal, you always have to check the scientific information or the relevant information, because all kinds of people have added things. Okay, some of them may have come from Vallalar indirectly through other people that heard him say something, but always check it, in terms of the available information on nutrition and so forth. Because some of them are not correct, some of them are just simply wrong. So, I would just add that you have to always use the standard of confirmation by the science of nutrition or other information on these things.
So, thank you, Doctor.
வேற யாருக்காச்சும் ஏதாவது கேள்விகள் இருக்குங்களா?